Hey guys, happy Sunday with Satan. Kidding. If you guys take that seriously, I hope you don't, because I don't believe in Satan. Anyway, who wanted a video on familiars? Let me see. Who wanted the video on familiars? I hope your comment is still there. Every time I go and I love a comment, or if I reply to one, it takes it away, it makes it go away. So I don't know. It's really hard to hold this phone because it is so freaking big. Okay, I can't get to it. I don't know where it went. So I think somebody wanted to know what about familiar spirits. So there's a bunch. I mean, it's really confusing. So I'm going to try to piece it together so it actually makes a little bit more sense. So from my tradition in Cornwall, traditional Cornish witchcraft, Gemagary, this is what. So this is literally my grimoire of what I believe, and with the workings I do, and how to create your familiar spirit, your fetch, and all that. Your fetch is your double that you send out in the form of an animal, so it is also a kind of a familiar, but it's a part of you more so. This is going to strike people really wrong, but it's got to be said. Every witch thinks that their animal, their pet, is their familiar. Nope. My dog? No, not a familiar. I have ravens and crows that are my familiars. So this would be in the realm of workings of spirit magic. So this is actually, the familiar spirit. So, in addition to taking living animal forms, which we do, I mean, you can, develop a very strong psychic connection with your animal, like I've done with my dog, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's my familiar. He's family. He's my child, my kid, so... Alright, the familiar spirits, there are more than one, of the Peller may be encountered to inhabit certain haunted items, such as sticks and other working tools, specially prepared images, preserved animal remains, and spirit houses. Often the nature of the item and the ways in which it is prepared will reflect and be intentionally attractive to the nature of the spirit desired to inhabit it. So, if you have, stone magic, if you find a hagstone and you have, it has a spirit attached to it, that would be your familiar spirit. So those are familiar spirits outside, in different, objects and in nature. Now, the Cornish witch will often keep numerous spirit helper and friends in addition to their primary indwelling familiar, for the body of the witch may also become a spirit house. So, yeah. It's really complicated. Now, as with carefully prepared items, the body must be made a welcoming and a happy environment for one's familiar. Thus, the Cornish witch must take good care of their body and being if they are to attract an indwelling familiar spirit, helper of their own. So basically, you eat good, you eat right, you exercise, you're healthy, you don't, put, crazy drugs in your system, like... I'm not talking about, mental health medications, but, street drugs, crap. Don't do crap. Don't do drugs. It's stupid. It is very stupid, and it doesn't get you anywhere. So, now, a practitioner's spirit items are lovingly cared for, kept clean, spoken to regularly, and in many cases ritually fed. So the indwelling familiar is always consulted for help with all workings and magical operations, and thanks for their efforts must always sincerely be given. So it's really interesting. So that is the indwelling spirit, the fetch. So that is what we send out. Sometimes it's an astral form of ourselves, which would be also, again, that familiar spirit. But this is what is, in traditional craft. So it's just a matter of going outside, seeing what it has to offer you. Nature, connecting with nature is the biggest thing right there to actually find your familiar spirit. And then there's more. There's a lot of stuff about familiar spirits. So here we have a very good book, A Deed Without a Name by Lee Morgan, and this is unearthing the traditional witchcraft ways. And even though it's a very tiny book, it has so much information in it, it's disgusting. I love it. Lee Morgan, you're amazing, and I love your hair. Alright, so now, one modern witch has this to say about her experiences of animal transformation. So it's skin turning. It's when you actually put on the pelts and the furs and you alter your consciousness to a point of transforming into your spirit animal or your familiar. So this witch says the first time I dreamed I was other than a human being was one of the most vivid dreams I've ever had. At the same time, it was fragmented, and there seemed to be pieces missing from my memory. I only dreamed it once, and I was about 14 when I did. So the first thing that I recall was jumping from my bedroom window out into the forest, or out onto the front lawn. Then I ran very quickly down the street. Everything seemed normal, but it was quite bright, though I knew it was night. I saw the neighbor's house, I saw my house, and I felt like I could run really quickly. The next thing I recall is standing above the remains, or a half-devoured body of some small, furry thing, and I realized I was eating it. Though this didn't disturb me at all, when I looked down at the kill, I saw myself, well, part of myself. Either side were my hands, except they were not my hands. They were very large paws of a canine, and I remember thinking how awesome it was that I was a wolf. A great big gray blue wolf. That'd be beautiful. I mean, honestly, that'd be beautiful. So, where'd I go? And I bound off down the street again, and that is all I remember. The wolf is the animal form of my fetchmate and my forefather. And though I have memories of dreams in which I interacted with my fetchmate, I didn't take the wolf form again until many years later. Alright, so this is a little bit different. So others may feel that they have experienced some kind of call, but have no idea what their familiar powers might be, although the extended self often manifests in an animal form. So our extended self, when we astral travel, when we place our consciousness elsewhere, we leave our bodies, we can become our animal, our familiar. So it's in us too. It's also outside of us, so it's two different things. There's a lot of it. Okay, so where did I go? Okay, so as you can see from the examples so far, there's no reason to believe that this will always be the case. So to begin with, we will look at the fetch beast and ways to discover if you have one, and if so, what form it takes. Now, fetch beasts and familiars. This is really interesting stuff too. So, also called in Germanic tradition the Flygia, the fetch is the follower or guardian that often appears in animal form. In North, it is clear that the Flygia was inherited an ancestral being carrying on the person's behalf the luck force of their family. Most people only saw the fetch close to the time of their own death, but some people were born with a particular gift for sending the fetch. So you can actually send your fetch form out to do your bidding. That's pretty much what I'm kind of getting from that question about the familiar spirits within traditional witchcraft. Now, in general, the fetch in its animal form suits the power of that individual and family line. So it's all about your family line, and it's all about the attributes of your whole family. That's what's inside of you. So that's why it's ancestral. A brave warrior is likely to have a fierce animal. Today, most of us have no idea what the fetch beasts of our family line may be, and it's also possible that more than one line or thread will express itself through us. So this could result in more than one animal familiar. It's really complicated. I mean, I'm confused already, kinda. When we look at the prevalence of imps in the witch trials, we see that many witches were able to transform into numerous different types of animals, or to send them as helpers. So it's basically anything that we feel attracted to that's inside of us, we can send it, boom, it's going to do our bidding. But I don't like that bidding. It's going to protect us, basically. It's a protector. which I really like. And that there were even forms that the whole coven had the ability to turn into at once, such as crows, hares, or cats. So this being said, when someone is in the habit of actually transforming into the beast, there is usually a primary animal form, because the beast is part of the second skin of that individual. So that's when you actually, you put on your pelts and your furs and stuff, and you become that animal. You kind of take on that, shape-shifting. Now, it is stirred up from the inside of the body of the person, though, of course, the fetch can and does range from the body and the individual, giving us a hint as to how mysterious and plastic our bodies actually are, unless a witch has already been chosen by an anthropomorphic spirit familiar in which his or her early days. This is the first and most important contact that a witch should make before purposely undertaking to cross the hedge into the unseen. So basically, yeah, it's your protection, it's your familiar inside of you, what's going to come out, how you appear in the astral realm. You could probably, have a pack of hounds surrounding you. There's so many possibilities. Now, where'd I go? So the reason for this is that the fetch beast, being connected to us via the body and blood by its nature, wants us to survive. It is deeply connected to the animal drive to survival and prosper in us. So this cannot be said for all entities that may actually approach you. So the fetch beast, or in its place the ancestral guardian or fate woman, if such a guardian comes forward first, or guardian or fate woman, or guardian or fate woman, who sometimes appears in the form of an animal, is the touchstone against which the safety of all other encounters is measured and double-checked. So it is this creature or being whose opinion you will ask when taking future steps with other spirits, because although it is an extension of your own skin, or we of its knowledge and power also goes beyond those bounds. I do have one spirit, and that would be my grandma, and I do believe she lives in me. I think when she died, part of her heart, I don't know, it's in me. So that's different, though. That's completely different. That's just, ancestral connections. Alright, so as we progress, we will see that some of the tools for communicating with the fetch beast are things you might already be used to listening to, such as the hairs on the back of your neck and other things that you feel in your guts or bones, or even the womb and other body parts. So, it's just a matter of basically, focused meditation. Just sit down, kind of figure out what's going on, and see what you can relate the most to with your own personality. Characteristics, look at your family's characteristics, really get into it, really see and do the word association. I love word association. So we have a big thing with birds, so I know birds. For me, some birds, crows and ravens, are my familiars. They come back every year. I talk to them and they leave and then they come back. They have yet to leave me anything like shiny things, like the woman on TV, the news, that kept paying attention to the crows or the ravens, and they kept bringing her stuff. That's a familiar spirit. Now, the animal form immediately tells you tells you much about the type of power the animal has. The nature of anything possessing stings, such as a wasp or scorpion, can immediately be known to be hostile and something we should not interact with for now. There are, of course, exceptions to this. So, such as when that creature emerges from your mouth or chest as your obvious double. So it's kind of like a doppelganger, kinda. Now, the fetch beast is usually a mammal or bird. See, there we go. Though snakes are also common, and is more often a wild rather than a tame animal, though plenty of horses, cats, and dogs crop up in witchcraft trial records. The creature usually, but not always, will belong to a land one has an ancestral connection with, or the land in which one was born. So, where were you guys born? Just take all of this into consideration. The spirit of monkey, for instance, would seldom emerge from the body of a British person, but the spirit of a kangaroo may well emerge through its 6th generation Australian or someone with Aboriginal blood, for whom the connection between land and body has become deep and intimate over time. So it's pretty interesting. It's really interesting to see that aspect. So we have layers. There's layers. It's layers upon layers upon layers. So it's really just you. It's in you. You've got to figure out what's inside of yourself. So I hope that makes a little more sense. We also have devils, familiars, and fetch brides. So this is getting more into, Alright, now as we can see when we look over the testimonies of witches from earlier times, not everyone is initially approached by an animal spirit. Isabel Godey seems to have initially been approached by the devil. Bessie Dunlop by a ferryman who claims that once lived as a human man. Others were taken by fairies or by the spirit of another living practitioner. The ferryman. So yeah, the coins over the eyes, you have to pay his toll so he can take your soul to the other side. Now, so let us now examine the humanoid familiar. The humanoid, it's human. Humanoid means human. It's humanish. So, these do not really fall into the neat categories, but for the sake of ease, we will simplify these things into 3 segments. Those who take an interest in the witch due to ancestry or other loyalty, those who take a sexual or romantic interest in the witch, and those who are of a higher level of power, the devil, the fairy queen, or king. So, now, for parents and fate women, the non-sexual humanoid patron includes a wide range of entities, but usually these patrons are connected to the familial relations. They are either like the fetch, an ancestral patron, or an entity that identifies itself as part of your spirit family or tribe. So these spirits will usually function as guides and teachers, or they may appear to give fateful messages at important crossroads in life. So spirits may also become a patron for reasons of sorceress lineage rather than physical, such as in the case where witches would see the doubles of witches known to be dead come for them to initiate them. So I mean, that's really interesting. It's really interesting. Anything can be your a spirit animal. But these are for parents and fate women. So I mean, my grandma, my grandpa, my uncle, you know, the one that just passed, you know, 2 of them just passed recently, my uncle and my grandpa, my pampa. So yeah, they would be, you know, my foreparents, grandparents. So we have that connection there. So, here's a testimonial of a modern-day witch from among many informants that shows an ancestral familiar or dead family member returning to mark the descendant for sorcery. And again, some people consider themselves the marked ones, and this is what this would be. So, directly in front of me was a cliff, a mountain. I could see on the flat top of the mountain, and there was a fire and a figure standing by it. I would climb up the cliff face that always seemed to be very easy in my dream, because I never felt tired when I reached the top. It was scary, and I recall looking back down from where I can and could see down to the blackness, as if the place I had been standing had dropped away to nothing, and I had to keep going up. I could not see, though, over my house and the houses of my grandparents and other people I knew. When I reached to the top, there was snow all over the ground. There was an older woman standing by a fire, and she smiled and held her arms open to me, and I ran to her. This is so sweet. And I called out, "Grandma," though she was not my grandma that I knew in life and who had lived still at this time. When I reached her, she hugged me tight, and I hugged her back, and I said to her in a childish way, one does when they are young. I climbed up so fast, so far. Aw. And she smiled at me. She wore a big coat, and she seemed to be able to wrap right around me and felt very warm in the snow. And she said the same thing every time, "Welcome home. I've been waiting for you. It's time for you to come home." She would turn and gesture for me to look out over the land from which the mountain rose. All the houses were gone, and there were forests that seemed to go on forever. And far away I could see the ocean, and then I would wake abruptly. Whenever I awoke, I was disappointed, and I would try to go back, trying desperately to fall asleep. But I always woke up from the dream at the same moment. And the woman would always say the same thing to me, and I never once asked, or never once was able to get back. It's crazy. So I was much older before I saw this woman again, in this manner. She is my foremother, my mother's grandmother, and I call her far more, as my mother always did. And I see her in trance and in spirit flight. I have walked with her in that forest, and I have sat with her in the mountain, and I understand now that this is my home. This is the home of my ancestors in the other world, and her fur coat and the fireside is always waiting for me when I return. So that's the familiar. Those are, the different kinds of spirits, familiar spirits. So we have a lot more to go over. We have a lot more. So fetch mate or fairy lover. That's another one that's really interesting. Fetch mate or fairy lover, and that's where we will pick up tomorrow. So I hope that answers some questions about the familiar spirit and about what goes on with it and how to do it. And I do just go back to my book, with Gemma Gary, and that's how I have mine. And so yeah, I do hope that helps. I hope it's not too complicated, confusing. So just kind of, if you want, listen to it again. And I'm going to cut this off real quick because 20 minutes is over. So, and I don't want to edit, but I love you guys. I hope you guys have a good Sunday. Be safe, stay healthy. Just stay healthy. I love you guys very much with all my heart, all the way from Venus and all the way back down. And there we go. I will see you guys tomorrow, and we will go on with the familiar spirits and how we can actually, get one, and, kind of delve into that and kind of maybe even scry for one, see what we can find. So, alright guys, I love you guys, and please be careful, healthy, and happy, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.